The note on the practice green before the first tee, the familiar click of a pure strike, followed by that split second of eye contact with your playing partner, both of you pretending the distance didn't feel almost too easy. You just flushed a 7-iron 170 yards. You did. The ball landed soft, pin high. You grinned, thinking the new clubs were finally paying off. But here's the quiet truth no one at the pro shop ever mentions. That club in your hand, it's not a 7-iron, not anymore. Let's start with a concrete number that changes everything. 1992. That year, a standard 7-iron from a major OEM like Titleist or TaylorMade had a loft of 36 degrees. Today, walk into any golf retailer and pick up a modern 7-iron from the same brands. 28 to 30 degrees. That's an 8-degree shift, maybe more. That is not technology making you better. That is manufacturing repositioning what a number on the sole means. You haven't improved your ball striking by 8 degrees worth of distance. The club manufacturers just moved the goalposts. If you've ever stood on the range, striped a perfect 7-iron, and felt that swelling pride, only to wonder why your old clubs felt so much harder to hit, you already know this feels off. You're not imagining it. And now that you see the pattern, you have a choice. Keep accepting the redefinition or start questioning every number stamped on a club. If this kind of quiet truth catches your attention, subscribe to keep uncovering the moves the golf industry doesn't want you to notice. In the comments, write, "I checked my lofts," if you've already looked up the actual spec on your own irons. The industry has been quietly compressing the loft standard for 30 years. Every new set you buy pushes the numbers down. The 7-iron you thought you knew when you started playing is now closer to a 4 or 5-iron from 2 decades ago. Here's the mechanism that makes this so devilishly effective. It's not a single dramatic lie. It's a slow, compounding drift. Each year, a half a degree here, a quarter of a degree there. It's justified as stronger lofts for better distance. And that sounds good. Who doesn't want a higher smash factor? But the math doesn't hold up when you look at the full bag. Consider the bottleneck. If your modern 7-iron is 28 degrees, what is your pitching wedge? Many are now at 42 degrees. That means your pitching wedge has the loft of a 9-iron from the early 2000s, and your gap wedge just became an entirely new category you had to buy. The industry didn't just compress the long irons down. They added a whole extra club to your bag by reclassifying what comes out of the box, and they charge you for the new wedges to fill the gaps they deliberately created. The Golf Digest Hot List from 2010 recorded that the average 7-iron across all tested models was 32 degrees. By 2020, that average sank to 29.5 degrees. That's 2.5 degrees in a decade. That doesn't sound like a catastrophe until you project it over a playing career. If you bought a new set every 6 to 8 years, a golfer starting in the mid-90s has seen their 7-iron drop nearly 10 full degrees of loft. That is not improvement. That is reclassification. You now have a bag where your 6-iron and 7-iron are separated by the wrong gaps. Your gap wedge is an orphaned club you never needed, and the marketing copy tells you you're hitting it farther. But you're not. The ball is just starting lower because the club face is de-lofted. You've been sold a shorter club with a higher number that creates a false sense of distance, and you paid a premium for it. Here's the uncomfortable clarity that comes when you look at the spec sheet yourself. The number on the sole is the most potent marketing tool in the industry. It's psychological. When you see a 7-iron, you assume a certain launch window. You think about spin. You think about stopping power. But a 28-degree 7-iron spins less than a 35-degree 7-iron. That means you lose the ability to hold a green with the same control you had 10 years ago. You traded control for a perceived distance bump. The system sold you lower scores by reducing your ability to stop the ball. Let's put a face on this. In 2012, a prominent review site, MyGolfSpy, tested a batch of game improvement irons. They found that the 7-iron had an average actual loft of 27.7 degrees. That is a 5-iron from the late 90s. The same year, a mid-handicapper, using a set from 1998, saw their actual 7-iron distance, and the new clubs were 17 yards longer, not because of better mechanics, but because they were swinging a club with 5 degrees less loft. 17 yards. That was the distance inflation. If that number just rewired how you see your bag, here's what you can do. Subscribe so you don't miss the next quiet truth about the clubs you own. Then in the comments, type exactly. If this resonates with you, there's a lot more where this came from. Link in the description and pinned comment if you feel this revelation deserves to be shared. You have been told for years that forged metals, variable face thickness, and better carbon steel gave you the extra 10 yards. That's not wrong. It's just incomplete. The real distance came from the loft. The face tech gave you a small bump on mishits. The loft gave you the big number, but you paid for the story about the face, not the story about the angle. Now consider your scoring clubs. The wedges. If your pitching wedge is 42 degrees, the gap wedge the same brand sells you is typically 46 to 48 degrees. That means your gap wedge is now a pitching wedge by the old standard. You bought a new club to hit the same distances you used to hit with your old pitching wedge. The entire bag has been shifted down a slot, and you bought new clubs at every slot to chase the yards you already had. Let's run the annual cost. A new set of game improvement irons, mid-range, runs about $800 to $1,200. Add a gap wedge, maybe a new sand wedge because the bounce angles change too, and you're at $1,400. That's the initial outlay. Then you lose gapping, and you find yourself buying a hybrid or a 7-wood to replace a 5-iron that's now too hot to hold a green. That's another $250. The drift costs you nearly $2,000 every 5 years. Multiply that over a 20-year golfing career, and you've spent $8,000 chasing the same yardages you already had. And you did it because a number on the sole changed. Not your swing, not your strength, not your age. The number. You have been paying $8,000 to accept a new definition of what a 7-iron is. That is the quietest, most widespread financial leak in the amateur game. My Golf Spy published a study in 2020 that measured the actual specs of iron sets submitted for testing. For 7 irons, the range ran from 26 degrees to 34 degrees. That's an 8-degree spread. Within the same category, same year. That means one person's 7-iron is another person's 5-iron. How can you possibly compare notes with a friend on a par 3? You can't. The number is meaningless between brands and sometimes even between models from the same brand. The mechanism that drives this is a simple one. The OEMs know that distance sells, so they create more distance by collapsing the lofts. But they can't keep doing it indefinitely, because a 25-degree 7-iron would be a 4-iron. So they layer on lofts more slowly, and they add length to the shafts to recover the feel. A modern 7-iron shaft is often a half-inch longer than one from 2005. That changes lie angle, swing weight, and contact consistency. You are not just buying a different loft. You are buying a different geometry. If you've ever taken a deep breath at the top of your backswing, tightened your grip, and tried to control a new iron that just feels less stable than the old one, that isn't your imagination either. The longer shaft creates variability for a mid-handicapper. You are more consistent with the old lengths, but the number on the new club says 7, so you assume it's progress. It's not. It's a spec sheet designed to look good in a launch monitor bay, not on a wet Monday afternoon with 5 rounds on your legs. That kind of mismatch is exactly why the smart spenders at your club don't buy off the rack. If you want to be one of them, subscribe to get the inside line on every piece of gear before you open your wallet. And in the comments, write, "I bent my lofts," if you've already taken control of your own spec sheet. Here's the inversion that should make you feel empowered. The next time you hit a perfect 7-iron, check the actual loft. Call the manufacturer, look it up online, or ask a club fitter. Write it down. Then go back to your previous set, if you still have it, and measure that loft. The difference explains the entire cost of the new clubs. You can get that same distance advantage from bending your old irons 2 degrees strong or by buying a set with verifiable lofts that match your gapping. Don't buy a new set of irons because the number on the sole promises distance. Buy a set because the club maintains the correct gapping for your swing speed. You want a consistent 8 to 12 yard gap between clubs, not a 15-yard gap on your long irons and a 6-yard gap on your scoring clubs. When you stack the lofts properly, you eliminate the need for a gap wedge. You hit more greens and you spend $1,000 less every 5 years. The quietest secret in the industry is that you can order any iron set at a specific loft. Most manufacturers, regardless of their base spec, can bend each iron to a standard 4-degree increment. You just have to ask or work with a fitter who knows what they're doing. That one request turns a game improvement set into a precision tool that actually matches your swing. And this is the beautiful part. Once you know the game, the cost leak stops. You stop being the consumer who absorbs the marketing number and starts being the player who dictates the club. You become the person on the first tee that others ask for advice. That 7-iron you're hitting. What's the actual loft on it? And you give them the answer that saves them $500 a year. That's the community you're now part of. If you want to keep building that reputation and never be the one overpaying again, subscribe to stay ahead of every quiet cost shift in the game. In the comments, write, "I ask for lofts" to claim your spot as the smart spender at your club. The last thing to notice is that this drift doesn't stop at the iron set. It is now moving into wedges, where the same compression is forcing players into 4th wedges and 5th wedges they never carried. And it is moving into drivers, where the stated loft no longer matches the face-face angle at impact. Every club in your bag is slowly being redefined against the standard you grew up playing. The only way to escape is to stop trusting the number and start trusting the spec. So, go check the lofts. Go find a launch monitor session, not to optimize numbers, but to confirm that your 7-iron is not actually a 5-iron. And when you find the truth, you'll realize you don't need a new set at all. You just need to know the language of the spec sheet. And you'll never overpay for a redefined number again.